KLTV sound check, KLTV sound check. KLTV sound check, KLTV sound check.
Okay, I guess we're up and going. So good morning, everyone. Um, welcome back. You had last week off, didn't you? We'll start with, if you want to join me with flag salute.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, I'll ask Commissioner Mortensen for a review of the minutes from 2 weeks ago.
Yes, I did. At least I'm sure I did because I always do. So I moved to approve the minutes of the activities of 2 weeks ago.
Any questions, comments? Seeing none, we'll call for a vote. Those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Also vote aye. Consent agenda, I'll try and run down this for you. We're trying to look at these things up today, so I'd have a little bit of knowledge. The first three are 2-year agreements with our VFSW Post, Cowlitz County Veterans Service Center, and DAV Herman Rogers, Chapter 37. These are services for honorably discharged vets. This runs the program or extends it to expire December 31st of 2026. So it spins it out another 2 years. A lot of you probably know we have a fund that they meet on and they disperse to help vets. Number 4, a completion letter to Lakeside Industries on the Hall of Justice project, the repaved over there, and that's been completed. We have an updated personal service agreement with Teresa Johnson, a CPA. Teresa Johnson, she handles questions we may have on the American Rescue Plan Act, the ARPA Act. That will expire. This contract is set to expire at the end of this year, 12/31/2024. It looks like it's the amount of the contract is $9,840. She's kind of as needed when we have questions on it. She reviews our stuff and makes sure we're in compliance with federal regulation on that. We have a completion letter with America Group for the Abernathy Creek Road Bridge painting, so that's been done. A warranty deed, I think this brings us down to 2 now for the South Cloverdale realignment project. We have another contract completion letter with Blue One Energy Equipment for Petrovin fuel system installation. This was a little over $90,655 contract that's been completed and done. And we have a resolution. Anytime we do some road work, it starts with a resolution, and we have a resolution for County Road Project number 809. This is Camelot Court Improvement Project. Camelot Court is out by Castle Rock. People use Camelot Court to go down. If you come to Castle Rock from the first exit, you'll see they call that Lions Park. If you look across, people access that area across. You'll see them salmon fishing, and there's some area over there where Camelot Court is the road that comes down and accesses that. And this is to pave a short section of it that is existing gravel at this point. It would be from milepost 0.09 to milepost 0.25. They'll replace the existing gravel with a light, however you say that, service treatment. Board correspondence, 3 letters from the Federal Emergency Group. The first one is a seismic hazard analysis on SWIFT. I read through that this morning. They were okay with what's going on with that. They agree. drilling program on Weir Improvement on Swift. They have some more questions. They're asking for more information on that. And another seismic hazard analysis on Merwin, and they're okay with that one. We got a letter from Corey Wright, Commissioner of Kittitas County, regarding the Broadband Equity Access and Development Program. This one's very sad, because this gentleman has done an outstanding job for us over at our airport. Letter dated 2/7/24 from Chris Polini, Southwest Washington Regional Airport Manager.
You're asking me to pronounce something?
Yeah.
Paolini. Yeah,
That's ironic. I look to you for pronunciation, right?
yeah.
But that's sad. Chris has done an outstanding job for us the last 7 years, so,
We won't be so lucky this time, I'm sure.
yeah.
Is there anything we need to know about his leaving? Where is he going?
Please,
Uh,
go ahead.
There's always something there, of course. No, in this case, he's taking the airport about as far as he can go, and trying to find an airport manager around Southwest Washington is a very difficult task. The Port of Olympia had been trying to find one for at least 2 years. And they finally convinced him that he should go there.
Yeah, we recruited him from Long Beach, California, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's a good thing in the sense that Long Beach paid more, but the life quality of coming up here is significant. It was a significant improvement, and he understood that. And
Yeah.
and I highlight that just because one of our advantages is bringing people of, you can't get them fresh out of college, but you can get them after they've been out 5 or 6 years and they want something a little more clean, if you will.
Yeah. And reading through his letter, he did negotiate with his new employer to give us 60 days of help in transition, so.
If I remember correctly, it's finishing up the new fuel
Uh,
tank system, replacement system.
Yeah, the fuel system, he has all out in a, what you call the Gantt chart, but completion always requires the manager to follow that through. He will leave it in very good shape. It's it's beyond that, but he'll always be a phone call away, he says.
Yeah, he's been a real asset and done well over there. Then finally, a letter from Leanne Couch expressing her gratitude for the prompt and attentive response regarding condition of county roads through the last snow and freezing event. I think you all see and know that it plays havoc on the roads, and our Public Works, Mike Moss and his crew, I think, have tried to address those as quickly and as promptly as they can. And then vouchers in amount of 15,050,353.93. And that's the consent agenda.
So it's larger than usual, $15 million, but we're, as the consent calendar suggests, we're completing a number of projects, which means the payouts are pretty substantial. So
Yeah.
all of the big amounts are due to these projects that we've gotten completed.
Pleasure of the board on this.
Mr. Chairman, I move we approve today's consent agenda as presented.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. We have any questions, comments, concerns on consent agenda? Seeing none, I don't see any hands. Okay, I'll call for a vote. Those in favor,
Aye.
Aye.
I also vote aye. Okay, well, before I head into public comment, I'll just give you a kind of a brief synopsis of two of us spent some time last week. Actually, I think it started the week before, the last two days of the previous week back in Washington, DC. It was, National Association of Counties has an annual convention back there, so that was probably the driving force. The other force behind it is I wanted to spend some time with our lobbying group, CFM. They're located out of Vancouver, Washington. We have a local rep, David Hodges, that's here quite a bit. Another two more, Joel, lives back in Washington, DC, and then there's a young kid, Kirby, that lives in Indianapolis. So we had opportunity to go back and spend some time with them, and we spent a day on the Hill with David and met both our senators and our rep. Well, Marie Cantwell, we met staff. Glusenkamp Perez, we met staff, though I chatted with her down in her office here in Kelso before that. And Senator Murray, we actually met. And the purpose of the meetings was I had three main items to chat with them about, and they're all real familiar with the first one. One is the Mount St. Helens and the continued silt running down that thing, and our efforts to deal with it. You know, I talked to him, I said, I can remember in 1980, I was in Vancouver when that went off, and I can remember watching it, and little did I believe that this many years later, I'd be dealing with the silt still coming down that thing. They're all very much aware and willing to help what they can on that issue. One of the things I brought out, we talk a lot about, it's Army Corps of Engineers monitors it for flood. The other thing I think they need to be aware of, and what we pointed out, and Public Works was real good at giving me I think about 5 pictures of a area as you head out in Castle Rock, as you head out to the gun range, where you can see, I should probably show them to you at some point in time. You can see the flow of the river is, I'll just kind of give you a graphic, is like over here, and then the road and stuff is over here. Well, so many years later, it's like this. So many years later, it's like this. And now, if you go out there, it's about 40 feet from starting to impact the road, and it's actually taking somebody's property, because the silt keeps moving the channel of the river, and so I brought those were the issues I talked about. I said, we appreciate the flood monitoring, and they're actually doing a study that may result in more monitoring, and so we'll see what happens. But I just wanted to bring attention that we have this unique thing in our area called Mount St. Helens. It's very unique, and it has a great history, but it also has a great burden, as we continue to see ash and stuff come down there at, I don't know, Dennis, you probably know the numbers, you sit on that, but it's unbelievable amounts of ash still coming down. So that was one issue chatted with them about. The other, another issue I wanted to touch base on was we have an aging courthouse that was built in the 70s. It's to remodel everything that needs to be done on that is hugely expensive, and so you try to decide which is the best way to go, and USDA has programs that will help with remodel costs, and also has loans. So we just wanted to bring it to their attention, and we did, and our firm is putting in a request for some money, a direct appropriation of some money. We'll see if it happens, but to help us with, some of the, air conditioning cost replacement and electrical replacement. Just for example, we have to replace the electrical and some of the air conditioning, and it's very expensive, but in 2023, I think the figure I saw was about 870,000 on just an auxiliary unit to keep that place closed. So almost $1 million just on an auxiliary unit, just to keep it cool. We had the courthouse, we had the courtrooms getting above 85 degrees and shutting down. So the short story is the place needs work, and we're trying to figure out what's the best way to do it. And unfortunately, that gets into finance levels that you need to kind of seek what alternatives are out there. So that was the second thing we talked about. The third thing I wanted to bring on the radar was Lewis and Clark Bridge. They have all up and down the Columbia, and they're no stranger to that either. From Hood River down here, they have a series of aging bridges, and at some point in time, something needs to be done with it. It was designed in the 20s to handle rigs of like 40,000 pounds. We have commercial traffic running over it now of 80,000 plus, and the mix of commercial to commuter traffic it's real heavy commercial. And so at some point that bridge needs to be addressed. It's the long process, but you got to get it on the radar. So that was the third thing we talked about. I told them I'll probably never see that done because it's a long process, but you need to get it started. So we talked about that. And then we spent a day with Joel and visited Army Corps of Engineers, which was the benefits. One of the benefits of having a firm help you is they can get you some appointments where if Rick Dahl calls up from Cowlitz County, he's probably not going to get it, right? He's not going to get to those people. So they're able to get you into these people. And we met with, I think his name was Steve Kopke, something like that. But he's like the head where all the decisions run through. He knows the people out here, but anything they do has to run through this guy. And I'll be real honest with you. I asked him, I showed him the pictures, and I said, what we're concerned about is the moving of that river. I know you monitor it for flood, and I know you have a study coming up, and we may get more of that, but we need some help or direction on how to keep this thing, try to keep it in its channel. The only way I know how to do that is, unless you have a better idea, is to dredge some of that. Because we've heard stories, and and as I told them, I haven't gone out and walked it myself and verified it, but if you, on Chapman Road is an old dump site from years and years ago, and I'm starting to understand that some of that is starting to be uncovered. I'm hearing reports, but I'll say once again, I haven't gone out and walked it myself. So there's some issues you have to deal with, and it's encroaching on these people's land. It's going to hit our road. It's going to start affecting houses at some point in time, and what do we do about that? And he was very, very honest, and I appreciate the honesty. He says chances of us putting a dredge in there for that are probably close to nil. I said, well, it just runs down and then it goes out into Columbia and they dredge to Columbia. He says, yes, but Columbia is a commercial lane. So you have commercial traffic, commercial boats and stuff running up and down there, and it's easier to get approval for that. Cowlitz River has no commercial entity that they're running up and doing. So the chances of the dredging are slow. We would help on some bank erosion and stuff like that, but it doesn't mean I'll stop asking. It just means that he wasn't very positive that you're going to put a machine in there. Even if we had the money and we bought the machine ourselves, it's not going to go in there because they won't let it. And then we spent, last time we spent was with Kirby, which is a younger member of their firm, and that was with USDA, a gal. And she gave us some good contacts. We have a local contact that lives up in Olympia, and we'll start working with them and seeing what's available to not only help with the Hall of Justice with some of those repairs, but they also do other facilities. If We've talked at times about trying to utilize our juvenile facility for some mental health capacity because we have capacity there. And they also help with that type of stuff. So we have a local contact. She's out of Olympia, and there's a couple other people, and we'll get together with them and chat with them and see what we can do. So overall, I think, you know what I told them, even if you don't go back for a conference, conferences are their own animals. You can glean some good information. I brought back a stack of stuff and I'll go through it and glean what we can out of it. A lot of it is, people seeing each other for the first time in a year and a big social type event. So you have to glean what you can out of that. What I thought was the biggest benefit, and it doesn't even take that much time, is spending the 2 or 3 days with your lobbying firm and having them set you up some specific contacts where you're there and you have an agenda and you get some one-on-one time. I think that's real beneficial. Even if they don't move, at least, and I think it's good for all of our commissioners to get that one-on-one time for then when they start seeing Cowlitz County, they can maybe put a face, oh yeah, I met that person. So I think that has some benefit. We did meet, I'll tell you this, we met with Senator Murray. She was doing business in the Senate. So she met us in her appropriations office because she's the chair of the appropriations, where all the money gets decided where it's going to go. That's a big old table, and that's pretty impressive office. Although I sit there and I said I could feel the tug on my wallet as I was sitting there to fund that. So that's a little bit, and as we go through the stack, we'll bring some more out and stuff that I've seen and get to digest a little bit. But I think spending time with your lobbyists and some one-on-one stuff has a lot of value. Conferences can, especially for new people that kind of get a lay of the land, have some value. But most of the time, just remember it's everybody goes back there to ask for money. We can't print money fast enough to satisfy everyone. Florida wants sand because their beaches are eroding. I said, I got sand. I got tons of it, but they don't want my sand. They want some foreign green sand somewhere for somebody else. But anyway, it's just, those are just kind of anecdotes. But any questions, or I'm trying to answer? I think I'll try and bring some stuff out as we move along and get through stuff. I actually think it's something that's good for us. You could do a 2-3 day trip. A commissioner could spend a couple of days with your lobbying firm, come back, and I think you gain a lot of benefit just being able. The trouble when you go out in a conference, you got 2,000 people out there and they're all rushing to see the people about the same thing, right? You go out on a little bit of off conference type time. We are fortunate to get some one-on-one time. I mean, every one of these buildings, they're huge, and you get in there. I've had to take my belt off more times because you got to go through security on everything. But you don't usually get to see them in their office like that in the Department of Agriculture and over in the other buildings. So. Yeah.
Thank you. That certainly parallels my experience.
Yeah.
That personal contact is important. I wanted to add 2 comments from my time away. My wife and I had planned to have a vacation last September on Maui. I'd never been to Maui before. And then the fire came that wiped out Lahaina. So everything was delayed until February and went back. And one of the things, of course, I looked at was when I heard that they still have 5,000 homeless folks in Lahaina because so many homes were destroyed. I thought, well, how are they dealing with homelessness? And I saw basically 3 approaches. There are very few vacancies in the hotel rentals now in the Lahaina area. because employees are getting access to those rooms. And so that was an interesting approach. We do something similar to that in this country in terms of, you know, putting some homeless folks in some urban areas into hotel rooms. The second approach was the construction of apartment buildings. They're having a building boom to try to meet those needs. The third one that sent shivers down my back were the homeless camps. We struggled for the last several years dealing with the folks stuck in that cesspool of Camp Alabama, and I kind of saw similarities. But in Maui, there are a whole series of public parks between the main road and the shoreline, the beaches. Just areas to park and then enjoy the beach. Well, they're now filled with tents. And that's kind of the default position. If you can't get into the hotel rooms and your house hasn't been replaced yet, you're living in the tent. And of course, the weather is as unpredictable as ever. And just an interesting, different approach to dealing with a different type of homelessness there. My wife and I got back home about 1:30 Friday morning. And at 3 o'clock, I attended a roundtable in Longview with Senator Cantwell to talk about the drug problem in this community, focused primarily on legislation she's proposing to address the flow of fentanyl into this community. And of course, from the federal level, the best thing that they can do is a combination of giving assistance to local law enforcement, because we have the bodies, but also stepping up border controls to try to stop the flow coming across the borders. And she has a number of proposals that she was talking about. But the representatives in the room at this roundtable Friday afternoon were providers of mental health and substance use treatment. So folks from like Columbia Wellness, Family Health Center, CORE, major agencies like that. And also we heard some lived experiences from folks who've been battling addictions for years, in and out of homes, in and out of jails, really struggling. And one of the very strong messages is that currently the government support for treatment, residential treatment, where they go and live someplace to go through the treatment, it's only good for 30 days. And kind of over and over again, the message was 30 days just simply isn't enough to change the lifetime of behaviors that have trapped them in those difficult behavior patterns. And so the strategy was, yeah, what needs to be done? And of course, you extend it to 60 or 90 days. That's very expensive. We talked about, we don't even have the personnel to fully staff the facilities we have now. How can we encourage more people to enter into that field to provide those services? And then we talked about the need for more residential facilities. And that's something that the three of us have also talked about, and Rick mentioned. We have some capacity at the juvie center, which is hardly used. We don't have very many bodies going through juvie overnight. And that could fit the bill. And they were quite interested in, kind of fleshing out and seeing what they can do, help finance addressing that problem. But pretty interesting roundtable. So we'll see what kind of concrete proposals get developed out of that. But that was Senator Cantwell that came to town and led the discussion.
You talk on housing. It reminds me, one other issue I talked with Representative Glusenkamp Perez, and I have commonality in the need for affordable housing. So I was telling her when I talked to her here about a gentleman that brought in a proposal just to show us what could be done. And she asked me to bring that back with me. So I took it back and gave it to staff and just because she has some concerns about affordable housing. She's especially in rural areas and stuff, and I don't know what kind of program she's looking at or doing, but you know, that's a goal I share with her. I may have differences in how you get it done, but it's certainly something we have in common. So I think she was appreciated the fact that it remembered that, or the staff was good with it and brought that back.
Frank Morrison was there, a participant to the round table, and he kind of gave a little bit of an update on where he is with the youth shelter, the 24 rooms that they're building in the old, the former Daily News building on Broadway. And he said he's running into a conflict between state rules and regulations that contradict each other in terms of what he needs to provide for safety for kids in a residential facility, and a very strict prohibition that there shall be no cameras for monitoring behaviors. And he says, you know, it's pretty tough to manage dozens of teenagers. You have to hire an awful lot of people to ride herd on the kids, theoretically living independently. So they're struggling, trying to figure out the right kind of formula to put to meet all the state rules and regulations and provide safety and to provide the housing for those homeless youth. So not surprising. Rules and regulations get confusing. We'll probably hear more about that a little bit later on too.
Yeah.
Or, yeah, I was here during that time, so I don't have anything of that nature to report. I do, I have lots of observations that I've collected over the years, including watching Cowlitz County. When I first took office, I did so for many reasons, including thinking that with just a little common sense, we could become the best county in the state of Washington. And then with that under our belt, we'd probably be the best county in the entire United States. And why I think that is because it's relatively easy when your laws and your attitudes are copacetic with human interest, everything falls in place. When you eschew mandates in favor of explanations and benefits, mutual benefits, then everything comes into place. So it is odd that I don't think you'll be able to rationalize a payback. So let's say the trip cost the county $10,000. If you were in business, you wouldn't spend $10,000 without a formal plan that says the payback is such and such, and it'll be in this manner and this time frame. Well, the irony here is that I'm pretty sure from observation at a distance that if you don't show up, if you don't have the lobbyists, you're guaranteed not to receive anything. So it's not like you're guaranteed to receive anything if you go. You're guaranteed to receive nothing if you don't go. It's just one of those odd things. The other thing, this discussion reminds me that we fail in many ways to understand what you can discern if you just step back and look and see. And by the way, I feel a little bit like the kid who's looking at the emperor and has an idea about his clothes. He's the only one out there that is willing to speak. We've got we've got an oversubscription problem for the dollars. As the chairman said, we can't print it fast enough. Now, we all know that that printing is coming near the end. We are now currently looking at the debt such that the amount we spend on national defense is about what we spend to pay the interest on the debt. When we cross that line over, things get even nastier. Last thing we want to do is not have defense and owe everybody everything, because then they own us. So the issue here about homelessness and drugs, we all know we've been fighting in the same thing, using the same tools for certainly the war on drugs, 6 decades, maybe longer. We still have this pretense that we just need a task force, we just need to shut the border down. I would simply ask everybody, just step back and see, what is your quality of life today compared to what it was when you were growing up? And decide, are we in the right path? Are things improving? They clearly are not. The job of government is basically to protect our life and property. And we feel less secure going down the street than ever before. Try go to Portland, for example. And even here, I'm told, well, I scoffed when I first came up here. People told me in some areas of Longview are unsafe. And I was like, you want to see unsafe? But anyhow, and so as long as we keep on arguing about we need more money, and we're going to have all these additional laws, we're going to go down the same toilet and continuing to do so. One of the issues with homelessness is tied to all kinds of things. Reason we have crime is crime is profitable. It pays. If crime did not pay, we wouldn't have it. Who wants to lose? Nobody. And there'll always be the oddball that can't do the computation and say, let's see, I came out with $100,000, but it took me 20 years in jail. You know, those computations will be misunderstood by people. And they are misunderstood now because they think they can get away with it. Just as a sidebar, many years ago, I was discussing with someone about capital punishment, whether that was effective. And when you look at the numbers, the chances that you pay the penalty are so small as to be not significant. In comparison, when Ronald Reagan sent the F-111s to get home Muammar Gaddafi, we didn't hear from Gaddafi for 3 decades or 4 decades, because he knew that the next one, he'd be certain to be killed. So as long as you think you can do things with impunity, hey, have at it. And fundamentally in everything is, remember that all these issues are predicated on a group of honorable gentlemen reaching into your pocket because they decide something they want or think should be done is more important than anything else. That reminds me, when we have oversubscription, the ability to decide on what to do really requires a framework of priorities. We never do that because we treat government money as free. You can always raise taxes. Well, I don't see a gentleman here who wears his T-shirt, taxation is theft, but anyhow, so when we look at things that our chairman went to talk about, there's a stark contrast between things that I think you might sway me government should do. So the blowing of Mount St. Helens was an act of God. That is something that I think we could all come together on and help people kind of get back what they had before the mountain blew. You can't do it perfectly, but at least you can try. Now, when you compare that priority versus a bridge to nowhere, which happens all over the place, I think the Corps of Engineers and the government itself is shirking the responsibility. That is one, that there were really innocent people, and Americans are wonderful people. They want to get together and help each other, but they don't want to be abused and they don't want to exacerbate the problem. The latter is an issue that I'm sort of talked about before. Regarding the Hall of Justice, again, that's a real problem. I think the last numbers I saw for a courthouse were some courthouse up north, something like 150 million. And we simply can't afford that. But we might if we thought the Hall of Justice actually produced justice. When we go out in the street, we don't see justice, at least I don't. And so it's going to be difficult for me to come and tell you I want another $150 million out of you for something that is not functioning well. As a sort of a nasty little sidebar in there, I've been trying to deal with this problem for half a dozen years, and I've asked the Superior Court to provide me the plans for what they would like to see as a building. I can't even get them to supply me a description of what constitutes the courtroom. So you can think of a courtroom as the gallery, the place where the jury sits, the place and so forth, including the jury room and bathroom facilities and maybe some other stuff. Those are modular. I can't even get them to provide me a module. I cannot get them to say, I found this courthouse. It's in someplace in Washington State. It's a new courthouse. I've got the blueprints. Build me something like this. I don't even have that. And yet, well, I should probably stop there. Lewis and Clark Bridge is really interesting. If I were an engineer today and were responsible, Mr. Chairman, you can throw me off anytime you want. I would take the bridge and put it in a computer-aided design system that we use today to build bridges. I put in all the specifications and see what comes out of that. Is that bent beam really a result of we're right on the edge of causing a massive catastrophe? That kind of thing. We don't do that. So we've got some people who are pretty well convinced there's a disaster there. Ignoring that at the moment, the Bill Bryant, who had been the port commissioner for Seattle, told us that intersection, the Iowa intersection, was the second busiest intersection in the state of Washington if you go by the tonnage. Of course, trees are heavy. So that's a vital economic value. And we run the risk of not having it. Do we know what we would do if that bridge went out? The economic impact is immense. Nobody bothers to try and put something that is believable and has a sense of urgency, a sense of priority. That, folks, is why I could get very jaded, because nobody is real about this stuff. We can try, but it really needs all your help, and it needs a revamping of the attitude that most politicians have. All right, I'll stop.
Okay. You brought up Ronald Reagan. One more anecdote, and then I promise we'll turn it over to, it is your meeting. We'll turn it over to you. the conference was held at the Washington Hilton. Well, Washington Hilton is where, Ronald Reagan was shot by Hinckley. And there's, they have a plaque on the wall that talks about it, and the locals call it the Hinckley Hilton. So if you're back in Washington DC, that's a little bit of history. Okay. A little bit behind, but it's over to you if you have anything, or you just like hearing us talk. Come on up. Yeah. Maybe. Good morning. There should be a button for the mic to come on. Perfect.
Yeah,
There you go. Perfect.
I had all kinds of things I was gonna say, but I guess I'm not gonna say them. I'm just gonna let you guys know that you guys know me. This is a 2441 Kalama River Road. I've been emailing all three of you extensively. Haven't kind of heard back from anybody for a while. Just like to say that, you know, I worked for Boeing for 37 years, had a top security clearance the whole time. You know, I'm not Charles Manson, not crazy, I'm a normal guy. So I was just going to ask why the county does not enforce the WACs that are being violated up there in those two instances where they've got sewage, holding tank, sewage containment vessel, and a building that has wastewater plumbing within 50 feet of a wellhead. The third one is on my title. So that makes it hard for me. Also, the last about 3 or 4 times I've come home and my wife has been crying, saying she hates living here. In a house that she designed, picked out everything of, we worked 20 years for. So I know you may not be able to answer it now, but if you could respond in an email and let me know why the county refuses to enforce these laws.
Mr. Chairman, you want me to handle that?
Sure.
Yeah, that question has been asked and answered a few times. There's an interesting problem in that we cannot deal with things that are only what I would call ephemeral. Let me explain that. So I have a neighbor, let's say, and his dogs are incessantly pains and they're violating the noise ordinance. I call the sheriff up. Sheriff shows up and the dogs are indoor, quiet, not doing anything. What can the sheriff do? Talks to the people. That's all he can do. And then as soon as the sheriff's out of sight, they can let the dogs out and then we got the problem again. The next call comes. So in this particular instance, the analogy comes in that we have a staff of relatively, no, I'll say they're good people. They go out there, they investigate. I remember in your case, there's a question about the location of something in the right of way and blocking the access and so forth. Our Public Works Department has gone out there, our health, EHU.
Environmental health.
Yeah, environmental health has gone out there and they couldn't find something that was a violation. If they could, they would jump on it because they know that we commissioners are interested in that. We don't want to tolerate the kind of garbage we see. And then the next, they themselves are in the job because they have a real interest in that. So they're not just occupying a seat, they have a purpose. I don't know what else we can do. Every time I get a report back, seems to be in order.
That's not actually the way it is these laws state that it can't be within 50 feet. And it's clear, there's no, I've asked to be educated. You know, I've asked to have sit-down meetings and somebody tell me where I'm wrong. But the WACs, I have them. I've sent them to you several times. The WACs specifically state that it cannot be within 50 feet, period. You can't have sewage within 50 feet of a wellhead. And in all 3 cases, there is. And it doesn't matter if I mean, I don't understand why you can say that they didn't appear to be an issue. There's no sewage leaking. That's not the law. The law states that it can't be within 50 feet in case, I guess. I don't know. I didn't pass the law. It's a Washington state law. I assume it's to keep, which would be horrible. Your dog barking analogy, I don't think is the same thing I'm doing here. I'm talking about sewage mixing with my drinking water.
Yeah, but let's
Oh.
not carry that analogy too far. The idea is that when we go out there and we do not see the problem, it becomes a he says, she says. And when our crew has gone out there, they tell us that there are no violations. Now, look, we've had people here saying things about the trailers are too close and all that kind of stuff. We've been through that. There are definitions and definitions, and I don't want to go arguing in that. For that, I would ask the staff to take,
Sure, I
take that. I don't know what else I can say. Mr. Chairman, do we want to ask EHU to go out there again?
Well, it doesn't matter if she comes out there again and looks and see, it's the fact that her letter states that the tire is right on the well. The trailer tire is right on the well. It's like 0 feet from the wellhead. It can't be closer than 50 feet. And that's the law.
I recall something to the effect that that was a non-operational well.
You know, they're on the same aquifer. You know, if you think that if you just pollute this well, it's not going to affect the other 4 or 5 that are within.
See,
300
so what
feet.
you're doing now is beginning to stretch
Okay.
the argument. And
okay.
that's where I say, look, I'm going to go with the staff.
All right, that's fine. 2445, that guy has wastewater plumbing. And that's my well. It is in use. It is hooked up to electricity and it is on the county's register. And you don't do anything about that either. So, you know, she says the one at 2445 isn't hooked up, blah, blah, you know, you read the letter, but mine is. And then I went down and talked to her and she says that they don't enforce violations of variances. So,
Want to enforce what
you
kind
know,
of violations?
guys, I'm just trying to figure out what's going on and why I don't seem to understand the position that the county's coming from. Tracy Jackson sent me a letter stating that she sent it over to the prosecutor. That was in September. I've sent emails to the prosecutor and he doesn't respond. You know, I mean, I just don't know what else to do. I don't have money. I can't sue. I mean, I don't have thousands and thousands of dollars to try to sue everybody. Yes, ma'am.
There is one thing.
Well,
During the high water, 5 days, you take and you get sterilized jars and you take your water sample out of it and you've taken it down there and you.
I have. I've done it once and it came back clean.
Oh, then I can't help you.
Yeah, it came back good,
Yeah, I
but
remember,
that doesn't mean and I can't test it every day.
I remember suggesting
And,
that.
and it does smell like sewage sometimes. My wash machine and a couple of the sinks, you know. Not all the time, but sometimes.
Yeah.
It's a smell, you know, and I smell it and
I remember asking or suggesting to get the water examined and
I did.
you're right, and you did, but you didn't tell us the results until just now.
I did. In all of my letters, I have stated that I had it tested and it came back good one time. I've stated that several times to you folks. I'm not trying to hide nothing or do anything nefarious or anything. You know, I don't lie, I don't cheat, and I don't steal. I do what I'm supposed to do.
Yeah, there are differences of opinion between
Well,
people that are completely honest. So that's not on on the table right now.
I appreciate your time, gentlemen, and I'll let somebody else speak. Thank you.
Were you able to get Tracy?
Good morning.
All right.
My name is Seth McNally, and I'm the Executive Director at the Children's Discovery Museum. And I just wanted to come in today and introduce myself and introduce our organization and what we do. So the Children's Museum was originally over at the mall, and it was originated in 2016 by Aaron Harnish, pediatrician at Peace Health. And we have since moved to Commerce, and we have multiple educational programming for children in the community, including 25 different exhibits that have some type of educational component, such as science, math, art, and all of our programming is free to the community. I started back last year, right at the height of us reopening, because we were closed for the first full 2 years of COVID, and we opened in July of 2022. And my biggest goal of taking on the position of executive director was to bring more educational programming and resources to the community and children and families. And in our first year, we started our quarterly exhibit program that started with 4 quarterly exhibits a year, including our theater exhibit, music exhibit, and Boy Scouts of America exhibit that focused on forestry and camping. And then our last exhibit, which focused on the holidays. And this year we have moved into our second year, and we have upped our programming to 5 quarterly exhibits a year, starting in March with our NASA and space exhibit, and moving into our Weyerhaeuser and forestry and logging exhibit, which we are partnered with Weyerhaeuser on, and our introduction to robotics, which will have a partnership with Lower Columbia College. And we will also have our last quarterly exhibit will be our ocean, the science of ocean. So we'll have different exhibits for that in regards to talking about sea creatures and ocean life and the science behind the ocean. Our goal is to really just educate families and children and give them resources to be successful and to teach them about the world around us and prepare them for life after high school, and to give them academic success and supplement what they're doing in the schools to be successful. So thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
I would just,
don't go
before you
away.
leave, I would like to mention to the commissioners how I have witnessed the Children's Discovery Museum make a fantastic turnaround from being a dead program for a few years and not being open to the public as often as Seth has opened it. Also, the exhibits were not to the quality, nor were the community events that he puts on happening at all that I noticed. And it was kind of sad because at the mall, it was involving a lot of family and the same sort of things. Now, during that mall exhibit time, we had a lot of our Cowlitz AmeriCorps team serving their hours over there and doing a very fine job. Now, Seth is an alumni of Cowlitz AmeriCorps, and his work ethics are exceptional, and I am amazed at what is going on over there, and I'd like to see that continue and succeed in whatever we as a community can do to support that program. We would be doing a favor to our families. It's a free program. Other programs in Washington State charge. Ours doesn't charge any money because some of these families are low income. And I just don't want it to go away for lack of funds or lack of support. So I'm just here to speak on his behalf as well, because there was one event that you didn't mention that is coming up. When will that be?
Okay, so this Saturday we have we do monthly science programs for kids and family in the community, and we do monthly science Sundays. And this Saturday we're actually doing a special Saturday Science Sunday, and it's gonna feature First Responders Celebration Day. So we're gonna have first responders of Cowlitz County at the museum to show kids what they do, the science behind what they do, and how they serve and protect our community. And they'll be there. We'll have multiple organizations. I think right now we have like 10 to 15 organizations that are going to be there, first responders and healthcare and things like that, that are going to be there to have tables set up and talk about what they do and kind of get kids the knowledge and information about, you know, the community and first responders and health and importance of all of these different things that will help them be successful and help their families be successful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Questions? Yeah. So regardless of the rationale behind it or the explanation, I think that the homeschooler percentage has increased over the last few years, and I expect that would at least maintain, if not continue to grow. And so I'm assuming this would be a good resource for homeschoolers. Can you tell me about any interactions there?
Oh, yeah, for sure. So since I've started there, we've been open. When I first started, we were open Wednesdays and Saturdays from 10 to 2. And then during the summertime, we had extended our hours for, you know, kids and families that, you know, kids weren't in school at that time. But Wednesdays have always had a huge impact on homeschoolers and parents and small groups. They bring their kids into the museum and they use our exhibits to help educate what they're teaching in their curriculum through our exhibits and through interactions of the museum. And yeah.
So it would seem like that is a resource that fits our general focus on the youth.
Mhm.
And that leads always to, how are you able to do this? Which is a euphemism for, how do you get the money to do this?
So we rely on donations, grants, and then community support. So we've had partnerships with local organizations. Community support's really our biggest impact in our museum. You know, Waste Control and Warehouser and different organizations have really helped us to sustain. But grants have also helped, but it's just, we have reopened in July of 2022 and we lost a lot of those organizations and support, and we're trying to ramp those things back up because a lot of organizations thought that we had just demolished and that we weren't no more. So my goal has been to really go out to the community and express that we are still open and we are advancing our programming and providing more services than we have before. So yeah, so it's been a lot of community support. We do donations. So we do have community members that help donate and grants that do help us as well.
So your current hours are?
So our current hours are Wednesdays 11 to 4, and then Fridays and Saturdays from 10 to 2.
And if someone called you up and said, I've got my homeschooling class, can you open it for us on Tuesday from 3 to
Absolutely.
5?
Absolutely.
3 to 5? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
We like
thank
to
you.
provide those services, those extra services for families and homeschool opportunities if that arises for people that are interested in that.
Okay, thank you.
Perfect.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
I've, seen people or known people that have utilized it, and it seems to be very, very nice to have. They enjoy it. Anything else?
Yeah, I'm actually particularly interested in for the homeschoolers because it just strikes me, I've seen a lot of sort of a public school busloads dropping kids in, and they're running all over the place, seemingly disorganized, and like at OMSI or places like that.
Yeah.
This is a little
Well-
more structured, I would assume.
We'll
Yeah.
get 2,000 county executives and drop them off at the Capitol. They run amok.
Very good.
Anything else? Anything else you want to know from us, we're usually not shy about expressing our opinion if you have something,
And at the end, I have a couple of miscellaneous.
okay?
Well, if you're gonna keep asking, I guess I'll come talk to you. I don't know how extensively you've looked at the silt problem on like Chapman Road area and up in there. But much cheaper than dredging is wing dams. That's what the county or the Army Corps of Engineers, that's why they're on the Columbia River. You put wing dams in to slow the current down at the sides and speed up the water going down the channel to flush it. And I would think that you could probably strategically put some wing dams
To
in
do that?
there to keep the erosion away from whichever side you're trying to protect, speed it up down the middle and help flush it. And if you do that, enough of them, you get that stuff down into the Columbia River and make it the federal government's problem, I guess. I don't know, but
Once it gets there, then they take care of it.
yeah, I know.
I never heard of that wind dam, so I'll look that up.
But I would think wing dams would be a lot cheaper than dredging. It'd just be a matter of putting them in where you've got the erosion problem and try and slow that water down and let the silt build up back in that area behind the dams, help flush the river. As far as the courthouse air conditioning goes, have you ever thought of opening the windows, let some of that hot air out?
Actually,
I don't think they open, but
you bring up a good point. Most of the world doesn't have the kind of level of air conditioning we have up here. When I moved up here, I was surprised that anybody had air conditioning. For 2 weeks of the year, you're going to pay an enormous amount of money to have it be air conditioning, but heat is required. So once you got heat, you're almost into air conditioning, into cooling. The issue on those buildings is that none of the windows open, because I had thought that's exactly the right solution. Just open the windows. I need a brick in order to do that, but then it's hard to close.
Was there, I guess, I don't know, I remember when it was built, but was there a specific purpose? I mean, were they afraid that somebody was gonna escape out a window?
No, I think the building codes on buildings have changed. Even this one, these windows are not openable.
I don't know.
yeah.
Well, the original design did have the jail up on the third floor. That's been abandoned. We don't use.
Right,
the
I
jail's
remember
not
the
there.
third
There's still
floor.
A couple of offices up there, but
What's
the other feature was that was the trend when they built large buildings with concrete, steel and glass. And, you know, that's proven to be not very practical in the long run. And the cost for remodeling is now frightful.
So
Building
to
is pretty,
finish-
the building is pretty sturdy. I mean, it goes down to the bedrock and it's solid. It's just all the extra stuff that you add to the walls to make it functional and comfortable is aging.
Are the windows still qualified as energy efficient? I mean, would that be justified to replace the windows and maybe make them so they can open?
I think the answer is no, but I'd have to prove it to you, and I can't. Dennis, you said that the Hall of Justice had the jail included in the original design?
Yes, yeah, it was
Wow,
all
I didn't
supposed to
know
be
that.
the center, Justice Center for Longview and Kelso Police Department, as well as the county, and the jail was going to be there.
Do you know
And
off
the
top of-
first thing that changed was they found out the jail was too small.
That's what I was going to ask
So
you.
they added that extra section to the building to the north that is sitting on pillars.
Right.
That was to extend the jail. And then they discovered that if you have controls here and the hallways extend a long ways away, it's impossible to manage. And so the old design was thrown out and they built the new one about a generation later. So the Hall of Justice is 1970s ish, mid-70s design. And then the new jail was put in place in the aughts. So again, about 20 years ago.
And prior to that, it was upstairs.
And prior to that, the jail was in this building upstairs.
We still got a couple cells up there, so behave yourself.
Yeah, Alex the ghost apparently still lives there.
Yeah.
Have you used them recently?
No, I don't think they're functional.
That makes it even better.
Yeah.
Well, the controls for the elevator and this building's heating and ventilation system are up there on
Yeah.
that fourth floor as well. So,
So I guess the only other question I got is about the Lewis and Clark Bridge. I guess it's somewhere, hasn't somebody from an engineering perspective evaluated what the risk of that thing having a catastrophic failure is? I mean, I know there's people worried about it and naturally people see pictures of bent beams, they're gonna be worried about, geez,
Yeah.
I cross that bridge twice a day. Type of a mentality. And obviously it's going to be concerning, but I'd be much more concerned about, has there been an engineering evaluation as to the safety of the bridge?
I think WashDOT has looked at it a couple times, but I don't recall there anything of the nature that Commissioner Mortensen was talking about has been done.
Well,
And
that's
there-
kind of frightening.
I mean, I could be wrong, but I don't recall that being done.
so that's an interesting example because it was built privately. It was a private operation. A guy by the name of Wesley Vandercook, who people from Longview are familiar with, had the idea that, and the Longbell Company had the idea that they wanted Longview to be the center of everything. And so part of the key to that was building our own access to Oregon so that traffic could come up Highway 30 and come into Longview before they go on up to Puget Sound. And so he got funds, they issued bonds, and the whole idea was it was a toll bridge and the bonds would be paid off by the tolls. And by the end of World War II, they were bankrupt. And it was in place and the state of Washington took it over, continued the tolls until the bonds were finally paid off in 1966 or something like that. In the first decade of this century, they did replace all of the concrete highway panels. So it's been upgraded. The surface has been replaced. But one of the reasons it is as high as it is totally due to politics. In the late 1920s, they had to approach Congress for permission to build the bridge across state boundaries. Constitution requires Congress has to approve that. And at the time, Republicans were very powerful in Washington, D.C., controlled Senate and the House. And the delegation from Oregon was pretty powerful, strongly Republican. And the Portland business interests were very concerned that if it was a low bridge, that the river traffic would stop at Longview. And they said, we're going to oppose a low bridge. And so they studied alternatives. They actually looked into building a tunnel, which was kind of in vogue. In that time, they were building tunnels under the Hudson River and places like that. And that ended up not being feasible. They gave up on that. They built this 2-lane structure. The height was actually determined, talk about politics. It was a committee of members of the president's cabinet that determined the final approval. That made it really high. The goal was, from Oregon's perspective, make it so high it's too expensive and they'll give up. Well, that didn't happen. The bridge was built in about 18 months, which is stunning when you realize how long it takes anything to happen nowadays.
Yeah.
Wasn't there an
pretty
argument that also went along with the fact they didn't want to draw a bridge because of the traffic on the river?
Yeah.
So
You know what, I am in not everybody shares this opinion, and I told all the reps that realize that not everybody shares this opinion. I believe as a commuter bridge, that bridge will last a long time. It's the commercial traffic that I think causes some stress on it. And I said, I don't know if you need to replace that. If replacing that is one option, or you find a different crossing for commercial traffic and just restrict that to commuter traffic, you know, whichever makes more financial sense. I don't know that you need to replace the whole thing. It's kind of unique. It's kind of deal. And I think as if you're just talking passenger cars, it's not an issue. Just when you got the big trucks running over it.
Well, I would
like,
think that it would be prudent to have a emergency plan. If that bridge went into the river, it's going to stop all commercial traffic up and down till that gets cleared.
You either have to go down through Portland, or you go down to Astoria, or they fire up the ferry every 2 minutes or something.
Well, that's commercial traffic by wheels. I'm talking about the boats, the ships
yeah.
on the river are not
Yeah,
going to be
yeah,
able to
yeah.
traverse the river.
Yeah.
So that's going to put some emphasis on fixing the problem in a hell of a hurry at all levels, all the way from here to the White House.
Yeah.
So because it is a state highway, the state of Washington is in charge of addressing those issues. And they, in fact, when it came out that some of the girders were bent, you mentioned that earlier.
Right.
I mean, they looked at it and they conducted their study and they said, no, it's not serious enough to concern them. And then they ordered a bunch of work done. So they're aware of it. I mean, they've got the engineers that should have the answers, and they wouldn't keep it open if it was a danger to the public.
Right. Because they don't cross it every day.
Yeah.
So, but that, there's another issue with the bridge. It's not just what's above, but it's what's down below. And an elderly fellow from this county is pretty well known as knowing everything about the bridge, is very unhappy that the abutments down below that would form a buffer or a bumper that would tend to deflect a ship hitting the uprights is all gone. It's that stuff aged out quite a while ago. So he's sure that if ever a ship hits any of those uprights, the bridge is going to come down.
Yeah, I have
And if
no
you talk
doubt.
to him, he will bend your ear all day long on that.
Well, I would think that on the backup plan side of this, that there should be some type of, besides the ferry service, downstream. Is there any other ferry service anywhere on that river between here and Portland? I don't think there is.
Not that I'm aware of, Steve.
And that ferry service down there, I don't think you can handle 100,000-pound freight truck.
Oh, no, I don't believe so either. I think it's basically built for passenger car.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, I've been across it, and I don't even know if a truck could fit from front to back.
Yeah.
To be honest with you.
I don't think so.
When you ride on that little ferry, you keep your eye open to where the life jackets are at all
Yeah,
times, because it's a
yeah.
pretty small ferry.
Yeah.
Going back to what you said, Mr. Chairman, though, you're not alone. I think it would be much more intelligent to build another bridge while this one still was operating. And then you could do what you suggested, but in any event, that being a choke point, how about having a safety factor that said, if that bridge goes, I got this bridge?
Yeah.
We tend not to think like that. And I mentioned a lot of what we see here is because of the thing I've said before. We're slumlords. Government builds something and maintenance is an afterthought. The next generation will pay for that.
Well, I wish there was an easy answer, but somewhere I think somebody should be.
There is. This bridge was built in 18 months, you said? The bridge across over by Hood has been in the works for more than 10 years, and the cost just keeps growing every year. Yeah, we can't build anything anymore.
Interestingly, the legislation I mentioned that was necessary, Oregon insisted that the Hood River Bridge be authorized as well. So it was a twin bill for both bridges. And I think this one is in better shape than the Hood River one. That's still in operation also. The alternative, being the cynic that I am, The state has the alternative in the works. It's replacing the bridge between Vancouver and Portland. It's only an hour out of the way. From their perspective. They're all headquartered up in Puget Sound where it takes an hour to get anywhere.
Yeah, and remember I said about priorities? All the work being done in Seattle with, I always liked their salt, SLUT, the slut is anyhow, they've got all kinds of transportation that they're trying to do there, not realizing that if that's adding new features while this old feature is about to die. I'm talking about the bridge, not me.
Yeah, yeah, I know.
You were referring to the South Lake Union
Thank you.
Transit System,
Yeah,
the initial spell.
slut.
You know, it's something we need to keep pushing on. It's a long process and unfortunately, you've been around long enough like I am that usually it takes a disaster for them to actually move.
Oh, yeah, we
Yeah.
don't, we're not proactive anymore, we're reactive.
Yeah.
So
But-
until the crap is in the fan and everybody's trying to figure out which way how to get to the exit and say, it wasn't me, I didn't do it.
The disagreement I have with you is the word active. We don't know what active is anymore. I refer again to 18 months to get that bridge built.
But I thought it was important that we keep talking about it and keep pushing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is yeah. It needs to be pushed.
Yeah.
Somewhere.
I'll carry the discussion a little bit further about the bridge. Of course, the bridge was built way back, even before our days. And of course, I worked ironwork, put my way through college. That was the day when we walked the beams and we put everything in. We didn't have to have 2 or 3 extra structures just for people to get up and do it safely. So safety and health has certainly been is a very important criteria. The other is, as you well know, any facility, including the courthouses that we invest in, it isn't just bringing them up to some condition for health or for whatever. We have to also meet present day codes, which basically says it's cheaper to destruct rather than to remodel. So we face that. Regarding the bridge here is that when I was in my younger days engineering at the University of Washington, engineering, part of the assignment was to go out and walk underneath the bridges and sketch those so that you had an understanding. That was a cheap date for me with my girlfriend and which is wife at this time, because we'd walk underneath the bridges and sketch those and have it as a date. Anyway, regarding the bridge, in those days of engineering, it was hand calculations, working everything out. But in today's date, you have sophisticated computer programs. You can take and put a load up on there, measure deflections and do things. It's an example of, we have bridges all over the county, state, and country that need to be reassessed for engineering programs and master's program studies and doctorate studies, et cetera. This is a prime example of saying, hey, here is an exercise for a student at the University of Washington Structural Engineering to do an analysis for us, et cetera. And it has to do with doing some modern technology, putting 100,000-pound load up top, you measure deflections, and you know what, at least you test the capability of the structure. So it's pushing back on WashDOT to say, hey, what is the study, and give us some data.
Morning, gentlemen. Tony Benson, live at 295 Casey Road, Castle Rock, Washington. My wife and I just went through the arduous process of developing 20 acres for sale here in Cowlitz County. We finished that project in September, and it's taken me this long to calm down. What I would like to do is find out from you gentlemen, how best do I give you the information of where I see the system is broken and needs some serious repair? Would you like that all by email? Because it's going to be a long email. But I want to be able to have you guys have an opportunity to read it first before we sit down and discuss it.
I think emails
Email.
fine
Word,
if you,
well,
if you don't want to send two,
I
three
will
different.
take up way too much time to sit here and go through everything
Yeah.
without
I-
you guys having any knowledge
If you
first, so.
send one email to like the clerk of the board and she makes sure it gets distributed out to us.
And I can find her email address on the website,
Yeah.
clerk of the board.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Please,
Casey Road I live just before you on Crooked Creek. They vlog, so I can kind of,
I see your house.
you see, yeah.
Yeah.
Is that you building a new one there?
No,
That's somebody else. Okay.
no, are you looking over the hill and seeing
Yeah.
where? That's the property that
That's
I
the property you're
developed
talking
and
about?
the
Okay.
people that we sold it to are, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
All right, so send you guys an email to, again, what was,
The clerk of the board.
clerk of the board. All right, thank you. I'll be
Before,
looking for it.
before you go, it is rather painful being a commissioner, seeing the kinds of things that go on that don't make any sense. We are told many times we are just an extension of the legislature, but subordinate. So chances are there isn't anything we can do
Oh, there's things
directly
you
there.
guys can do.
I beg your pardon?
There will be things you guys can do if you.
Okay,
wish to
good.
Take it on,
Appreciate that.
okay? I was raised, you don't complain about something unless you have answers on how to fix it.
Yeah.
And I think that I have some pretty good answers. It just needs you guys to put them into place. Okay?
It'll be a good discussion then.
Oh, it'll be a long discussion.
Mhm.
Thank you, sirs.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, tomorrow.
Well, do you want to do the miscellaneous?
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. You had a
Yeah,
couple
no,
minutes.
no problem.
Yeah.
I forget about myself too. I thought this may be a good opportunity based on the topics and emails we've gotten about what the future, near future is at the gun range. You know, the questions, not so much about there were always questions about the gun range, but of LT1 and being shut down and all that.
Yeah.
Do you have the latest on that?
I know I've seen some of the talk on it. If we end up developing that or get the organic farm or whatever it is that we're working on up there. It
Yeah.
may cause some closure.
It
in some
isn't clear.
areas.
Yeah, I agree with you. It isn't clear to me, but there were rumors going around that there was going to be shut down ASAP, and we can't guarantee the long future. We won't even be in office in the long future. In the near future, there are no plans to close down the off-roading there.
If it keeps eroding away, it'll shut itself down over time.
Yeah, there are efforts to prevent all that, and we just don't know how they're going to interact. But we are appreciative that that's one of the areas that is pretty well maintained by the people who use it. And I've even gotten letters that said, hey, if anybody comes out there and trashes that place, you call us. We'll clean it up and we will make sure it won't happen again. So you can't argue against that. At least I couldn't.
Yeah. No, I don't.
And the other one is just to apprise you, I finally closed the loop again with our thoughts about the juvenile detention center and maybe having a synergism with Lewis County. And I think if I were to characterize it as I see it, there's just too much provincialism. There are laws in the books that say each county has to have this kind of facility and so forth. It doesn't immediately preclude the counties getting together and trying to share stuff. But to do that would require us with a willingness to share and this kind of thing. And there are some obstacles, like if the facility were not in Longview as it is, would we what troubles would we find having to drive up to Lewis County or vice versa? And I don't know the answers to that, but there's no point in asking them if there's no appetite on either side.
Yeah.
Of the court systems to proceed with that.
I can, we have conversations on that place a lot. And so last time I was over, I had a phone call with, George. Because one of the things we run into a lot of times is the judges will point out, you can't mix adults with the juveniles. And so I just asked, I said, well, we need a little help then. What do we need around here? And right now we send two group of kids out of Cowlitz County. One are mental health issue. If we have kids that are working with that, we send them, because we don't have anything in here, we send them up to Seattle or Yakima or whatever. And another is kids rehabbing out of drugs. We ship them out because we don't have anything here. So my conversation with George, I said, when I get back from Washington DC and your schedule fits, and probably Judge Hahn, because she's kind of overseeing that now, sit down and see how we can we offer those kind of services, because they'd be juveniles and they could fit with other juveniles in our center here and not ship our kids out. Opening conversations.
Yeah, okay, that certainly is a good thing. By the way, on these things, there are some obvious things, and mixing adults and juvenile is one of those. In my weird method of assessing where people are, the moment they come to me and say, well, we can't mix adults and juveniles, they've already told me they're really not interested in the subsequent discussion. They've already made up their minds, because that is obvious. Everybody knows that. So why not bring something up that might be discussable, if you will?
And I had to press a little bit to get that, but I think a couple things have come up
Yeah.
that we could look at.
I got I got some information out of George, and I forwarded that up to the county manager. And it was when we close the loop, with a cordial conversation, but I don't know where or who is not interested, but clearly there was no interest on that side. So that ends it there. Now, it may be that we have another county with whom we might want to cooperate. Lewis County seemed like the natural one.
Yeah. I think there's things to still keep exploring on that.
Yeah.
Okay.
That was it.
That was it. Need nothing else. I'll take one last check for hands. I see none. Tomorrow at 2:30, we have American Rescue Plan Act, the ARPA. They'll be in, kind of give us an update if you have any interest in that plan, what's going on with it. We'll have that discussion tomorrow afternoon. With that, we will adjourn. Thank you.
Steve, before you leave,